Ever think about how, like, someone's name we might not even know could be someone who actually, like, changed how things are today?
Mhm.
Like, what if I told you there was this teacher in South Africa, right, during apartheid, and then this guy ends up becoming a huge deal, like, fighting for workers around the world?
Wow.
That's the kind of story we're diving into today, the life of Membathisi Mdladlana. He just passed away at 72.
It really makes you think about how, like, big changes, they don't always come from some big event, you know?
Right.
It's more like people working at it day after day for years and years. That's where you see the really deep impact. Like with Mdladlana, from teacher to, being in the government, even representing South Africa to other countries.
And we're going deep, got his biography, news articles, the whole nine yards. So try to picture this. 1952, South Africa. Apartheid is the law of the land, right?
Yeah.
Affecting everything. And this is when Mdladlana decides, I'm going to be a teacher. What does that tell you, just from that choice?
I mean, that's huge, right? Education back then, under apartheid, it was really about control. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they used it to keep things the way they were. So for him to become a teacher then, it wasn't just a job, it was like a statement. He wanted to help people who were being held back.
It's like his very first job was like, no, I'm going to push back against this. And that idea that wanting things to be fair, it's in everything he does. He wasn't just watching as South Africa changed. He was in the African National Congress,
Yeah.
like shaping how it happened.
And that was such a crazy time, going from this really oppressive system to a democracy.
Yeah.
So many questions about how to actually get rid of apartheid, rebuild it the right way, especially for workers who've been treated so badly for, like, forever.
Which leads us to him being Minister of Labor for over a decade, starting with Nelson Mandela himself.
Wow.
How many people can say they worked with Mandela? Seeing those first years after apartheid firsthand.
That's almost unheard of, to be in that kind of position for so long, especially with, different presidents, different politics. It says a lot about him, how he handled all that without losing sight of the workers.
So it wasn't just about climbing the ladder, it was about using each step to help the people he believed in. And it went beyond South Africa, too. He became their high commissioner to Canada, basically like an ambassador, right? Taking his experience to the whole world.
Exactly. And being high commissioner, that's all about representing your country, building relationships internationally, navigating all that. It takes a deep understanding, not just of your own place, but where you're stationed, too. Plus, knowing how to connect with people, find common ground. And this wasn't just any country, it was Canada. They care about social justice, have a strong labor movement, too.
So going from that classroom in apartheid South Africa to speaking for his country on a world stage. Talk about a journey. But that thing about him speaking his mind, even when it caused trouble, that never went away.
You go into the controversies, right? When he said some things that really got people talking.
You got it. And I think to really get those, we got to understand what was going on in South Africa then, how complicated it all was. All right, so those controversies, let's get into it. Because it's not just like juicy gossip. It gets to some really tough stuff South Africa was dealing with.
Yeah, for sure. One that comes to mind, 2008, there was this court case, right? Decided that Chinese South Africans, they could be seen as black under the law, which was huge for things like, those programs trying to make up for apartheid, giving advantages based on race. Mdladlana, he says some things publicly, and some people thought he was against this ruling, called him racist even.
And this wasn't just like a small thing, right? This was all over the news, got people fired up.
Oh, absolutely. It blew up.
Yeah.
Gets right to the heart of this debate that's still going on. Who gets to decide what black even means in South Africa? Especially after they spent so long under apartheid, being told what race you are, it's really sensitive. And what Mdladlana said, it hit a nerve.
Seems like he was like stepping into a minefield. Even now, that topic is hard to talk about.
No kidding. And this wasn't the only time he got people riled up. I mean, think about it. He's Minister of Labor, so when he speaks, people listen. 2009, he makes this comparison, says labor brokers. Those companies that find you those short-term jobs, he says, they're like human traffickers.
Whoa, okay. Now that is a strong thing to say.
No kidding, right. Really loaded comparison. On the one hand, you got people saying, yeah, some of these labor broker places, they're exploiting people, taking advantage, but then saying it's the same as human trafficking, that's extreme. Hurts the whole industry, some said.
So again, right in the middle of this really complicated issue, this guy, he was not afraid to speak his mind, even if it meant ruffling some feathers.
I mean, that's what makes him so interesting. It would have been easy to just keep quiet, not rock the boat, but he didn't. Used his position to make people think, even if it was uncomfortable.
Makes you wonder about being a leader, right? Is it about keeping things calm or pushing for what you think is right, even if it causes a stir?
Tough balance to strike. But with Mdladlana, even with the controversies, he never stopped caring about workers, about fairness. And you see that in how people reacted when he died. All the tributes, the sadness, it was real.
It's one thing to have achievements, right? But when people feel that strongly, when they're genuinely sad you're gone, that says something about you.
For sure. There's this one quote really stuck with me. Irvin Jim, he's head of MMSA, the metalworkers union, one of the biggest in South Africa. He said, he really served the working class with flying colors. As metalworkers, we lower our banners. That's not just respect. They lost someone important to them.
Yeah, like he wasn't some politician to them. He was on their side. And it wasn't just the union guys either, his own family. They talked about how he always stood up for the little guy no matter what. Like his whole career, it all goes back to that choice, being a teacher, helping people, fighting for a better world.
That's like a thread through his whole life, right?
Yeah.
From that classroom to the government, everything he did, it came from wanting justice for people.
So we've talked about the controversies, what he did, how he affected people. But for our listener, someone just learning about this guy, what's the main thing to take away? Why should they care? It's easy to think, right? Like changing the world's got to be this big, loud thing. But Mdladlana's story, it's like it reminds you that sometimes the real changes, they happen one person at a time, one problem at a time, you know? Just working at it your whole life.
Totally. It's that dedication, never giving up on trying to make life better for working people. That's what he leaves behind. He wasn't looking for fame. He was shining a light on the things that mattered to him.
Makes you think, who are those kind of people today? The ones working hard all over, fighting for what's right, for a better future. We might not know their names, but we see the results every day.
That's what I hope people take away from this, to look past the headlines, the big news, and see those everyday heroes, teachers, people organizing in their communities, those fighting for others. The ones working quietly, but making a difference.
Because that's what tells us anyone can make a difference. You don't need a fancy title or be in the history books to leave things better than you found them.
And hey, maybe by learning about these folks, telling their stories, we inspire someone else to fight for a better world too.
So as we finish up this deep dive on Membathisi Mdladlana, his life, what he stood for, I'm going to leave you with this. Who are the unsung heroes you know? Whose stories got you fired up? And what can you do in your own way to keep that going? Because the world needs more people like Mdladlana, people willing to fight for what's right, speak for those who can't, and spend their lives building a better future for everyone.